and I'm going to, sleep on it. I'm going to take the weekend to see if it gets better. And we wind up finding out that we get into trouble with these types of ideas that we have developed in our own entities. So what we want to talk about today is how we can handle that better. And so to start off, I just wanted to let you know that the trust on a yearly basis handles about 860 claims on average and about 225 incidents on top of that. So there's a high volume of claims, and we're not asking for folks to just send in mindless paper cut claims and different things of that nature. But if there's something where you're in doubt, we want to make sure that you recognize that we're prepared and able to handle these sorts of claims. Number one thing when a claim comes rolling in, you want to make sure that you take care of the employee. So if you're out and you're out in the field and you got an employee that gets hurt and you think he's hurt bad or she's hurt bad, make the call, make the 911 call. We don't expect you to be a physician. We don't expect you to know all the ins and outs of a concussion or any of those things. So we want to make sure that you're getting the right people out to help your employee, and we'd want you to have that same help as well. So while you're at work, make sure that we get you taken care of medically. We don't want you to be put at risk because we're trying to guess as whether or not you're doing okay. When there's a crisis, make the phone call. Make sure that you get the help that you need. The next thing that pops up is well, gosh, I don't know if I would actually do something about this claim if it were to happen to me. So if this were to happen to me and I was at home, I got a bee sting, I may not do anything about it. I might go get some ice and I might cuss the bee a little bit, but I wouldn't do anything about it. Well, when you're at work, try to view it as something that's a little bit different than that. All right, it's not just hey, I don't have any problems hitting me right now, we'll deal with it later kind of thing. When you're at work and you have something like this crop up, I have on here a bee sting. I know of an employee that had a bee sting and, thought, well, this isn't much, and, considered that he's just going to continue working by himself. Well, he was working by himself, and as he got, further along in the day, his, sting was near his head and it started to swell. And because he didn't have anyone looking at him, he didn't recognize that it got really actually quite bad. And it started to have some impact on his breathing, and that's when he decided to take some note. And, so to recognize that at work, we don't treat it like we do at home. Same thing with a scrape. There's potential for infection and that sort of thing. What we want you to do is report these things and let the pros figure it out. And I want to talk to you about that in brief. There is a claim that can get started with a trust. It's called an FYI claim, for your information. And someone at your office may call and start this claim and say, hey, this is an FYI claim. And what they'll do is they'll tell them a little bit about the injury. So the administrator said, oh, he came in, he had a bee sting on the back of his neck. He said it wasn't a big deal. And so the nurse that handles this phone call for Constitution State Services will say, okay, well, we're going to, call the employee and see what's going on there. And they'll call you and kind of see what your condition's like and maybe make some recommendations based on their experience as claim administrators and adjusters. So let's let the pros figure it out. Another, an incident would be like a cat scratch. And, you see those come in quite often with, folks that are handling animals or firefighters getting cats out of the tree. We report them because this type of infection that comes from a cat scratch can end up cropping up, down the road in a month or so. All right, so after you have the incident and you've got people taken care of, we recognize there's going to be some paperwork that goes on. And this paperwork is, multi-front in its intent. What it would like to do is discover, what the conditions were surrounding the incident so that those can be avoided going forward. It also will give some information, to the doctor so that they can, take care of some things specifically, as well as, for the, the claim that goes along with this. Ooh, that went faster than I thought. I'll give you one more minute on this. All right, so make sure that we're reporting all of our incidents. There are some requirements for us to report when incidences are extremely bad. And the main thing that we want for you to find out when you get to the doctor and it comes back to the paperwork are your restrictions. The doctor is going to say, I don't want this employee lifting over 50 pounds. I don't want this employee lifting or things over their head or bending over so that their head is below their waist. Whatever those restrictions are, we want to make sure that those get to the paperwork so that we're aware as the employer, as your insurer, so that folks can get healthy back on the job in a reasonable amount of time. This slide right here is somewhat tricky. I want you to read the second line before you read the first. The first line shows where the employee is reporting to the employer. And if it's in the green, it's from a 0 to 3 day period, which means the employee said to the employer, within 3 days, I've had an injury here at work and I need to have it looked at, right? 90% about are coming in that way, and that's fantastic. You're doing a great job. That says to me that I value my health, and I'm going to tell my employer when I believe I've been injured. The next section there, which is probably about 6% of the folks are getting in that 4 to 7 day period where they're saying, I'm going to take a couple of days and see if this gets better. We'd like to reduce that down to none. We don't want anybody waiting to report these claims. And then also there's a section in there of 1%ers that are in the just under 10 day period, so 8, 9, 10 days. And then if it's red, that's 11 or more days where it gets to the notice of the employer. So that's what the area where you can work on as a frontline employee. Make it so that there are no 11+ day reports. And the reason is when the claim gets started, we can get in touch with you. We can make sure we're communicating with the physician so that you're not suffering unnecessarily, so that the physician can get you the proper treatment and get you back on the job as quickly as possible. Now, the one above that, I'll just make a quick note on the overall lag. It says accident date to date the notice is received. That has to do with administration of the claim. 53% of those are making it to travelers on the 0 to 3 day term, and then the remainder of them are just too far in advance. And there's no penalty for reporting a claim. Like I say, there's the FYI claim. It can be put in there. Its cost is very minimal. So it's not like there's any real negative to you putting those incidents before our Constitution State Services, our third-party administrator, so that they can start managing the claim properly, getting you the care that you need. All right, a couple of things that come from reporting, and I just want to maybe give you a hypothetical here. Envision, 10 years down the road when a lot of your own children are in the workforce, or even 20 years down the road when specifically your children will absolutely be in the workforce. What will be the culture of reporting claims then? Will they be hesitating to bring a claim to the attention of the administrator? The answer to that, I think, is pretty solid no. They're not going to hesitate. They're going to put that information in front of the administrators. Now, the older generation, the baby boomers, maybe they grab a hold of their injury and go, "Oh, that hurt real bad. I better put some tape on it or rub it in the dirt." That's going to go away. And so we need to change that culture as we move. We have some requirements and so forth that bring us to that, but these are the ways that we actually reduce the cost of claims and reduce the suffering of the employees. So keep in mind that this is something that's a benefit to you. Now, when you do go to the clinic, when you're getting hauled in, there's a chance that your administrators have put together somewhat of a packet, and they've got a specific place that they want you to go. They're going to have a supervisor that comes in there and, communicates with the physician, quite possibly on that first visit, to talk about, the job, the description that you have, and maybe some of the restrictions that the doctor is thinking about. Make sure that you're working with the restrictions that you receive from the doctor and that you're reminding your employer of the restrictions. They say, hey, I need you to go out and, plant trees today, and you're going to say, well, remember, I have that restriction. I can't lift any more than 30 pounds. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind as you're repairing, but there's going to be some requirements. So keep that in mind, that you're going to have to work through some of this paperwork and getting your witness statements down and also the conditions of the incident, so that we can evaluate and analyze how this took place. Those things you'll have to help out with us on that. What you can expect when you do have a claim is information, and there's a case nurse that's that's specifically assigned to your case. That they are available, and they will actually call you and give you their information so that you can stay in touch with them if you have questions, things that develop, as well as your care physician and so forth. You'll keep in touch with them as well. There's also a website that's been set up with your claim number. You'll be able to go to this website, mywcinfo, myworkerscompinfo.com, and with your case number, you'll be able to pull up your case and receive some information. The adjuster that's assigned to your case will keep in contact with the contact that they have at your work. So if it's your recorder, or possibly your human resource person, or maybe even have a risk manager at your ND, they'll keep in touch with them, and then they'll also send them the information on updates from your doctor and those sorts of things. So Jason, tell me, have we had any questions come in, or is anything that anyone's brought up, or Doug? And Jason may have fallen off the face of the earth. Well, one thing that did come up in our last presentation is someone said, well, what if there was an employee that's out in the field, they pick up a bag of trash, something slides into their leg, they see it's a hypodermic needle. What do you expect them to do? Well, what I want you to do is, get into your IDEA system that it's okay to report the claim. And if there's something of question, if you have any kind of doubt, report the claim. That's what we're asking you to do. So making a report to your contact there in the office. The person in the office will have access to the website, and just simply on our website, utahtrust.gov, there's a claims link, and from the claims link, there's a link to the Constitution State Services website, or the phone number, which the phone number is a 800 number. You pick up the phone and you have a qualified professional that adjusts claims day in and day out. They'll give you the information of the things they want you to say. Say, hey, I want you to take a picture of where this happened. Hey, you are using a lawnmower. I want to see that lawnmower. Pull it aside and don't use it until I can get there. And they'll give you the information that you need for your claim. All right, so that's our presentation.
Hey, Lance, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I don't know why you couldn't hear me before.
Oh, did you have a question?
I had all kinds of questions. So one question, one great question that came up. Sorry, I was working with some folks. We're having some challenges with their audio, and then I had a couple of people dial in or send some questions, not in the chat. It went through the Q&A, and I missed those, so I apologize for those folks. And I had questions regarding 24-hour reporting. Well, first of all, one question is what type of what type of claim needs to be reported within 24 hours?
Well, in any claim, we'd like you to report that to the trust within 24 hours. If there is a fatality or a significant injury, which is requiring hospitalization of 3 or more of your employees, those are things that need to be reported to OSHA, Utah OSHA, within 8 hours. And there's a phone number, and there's also a location here in Salt Lake where you can actually walk in and in person give them the report of that. So, but at the trust, if you have an incident, we'd like that to be reported to us within that first 24 hours of it occurring, because that way we can get the right get the right people in place so they can investigate this. And a lot of times with this FYI claim, Jason and everybody else, if you open up that claim, a lot of times they'll close the claim on the phone call. They'll say, okay, it was this type of injury, and we feel comfortable with your description of it. They'll open it, make some notes, and they'll close it immediately. Otherwise, they'll have a reminder for themselves. They'll leave it open for 7 days, and then they'll close it in 7 days automatically. So it's not like it's a real big hassle to have that claim reported. So 24 hours is any incident that takes place.
Yeah, and so the question, there's really two reporting requirements. First should be from the person that's injured to their supervisor, and that's really an immediate report. So that reporting goes immediately to the supervisor, so we can take action right at that point. The 24-hour requirement is to get that into the trust, and like Lance said, it's something that we wanted to capture that information. There was another question: what happens if we don't do it within 24 hours? Will you be penalized, or is the claim not valid? Well, that's not really the case. Now, if it goes on an extended period of time, that could affect the compensability of that claim. But the big thing is we want to be able to get the proper care to that person as soon as they possibly can, and make sure that any guidance is given that needs to be there. Like Lance says, a lot of these maybe we call them minor claims, or it may be something. Hey, there's not really anything that we're going to do right now, but I want to make sure that I've got this recorded. Those are the type of things that we're looking for. You know, this is. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the best point of this is that we're not really prepared to make that judgment call. You know, each one of we've been injured in our lives and whatnot, but as far as whether or not it's a compensable claim, we leave that up to the people that have that as their full-time job. You know, so we get an injury, we got a bee sting, we've got a bad cat scratch. You know, we've heard lots of horror stories where these things crop up down the road, and we say, gosh, did you think to tell anybody about it? No, I didn't think anything about it. Well, now we're telling you that you should think about it, and we want you to put those out there so that we can keep you healthy and make it so it's a claim that we can cover. So,
okay, I'm just looking at another question here. And it says, do we need to call the trust as well as Travelers, or does my call to Travelers cover contacting the trust? Yes, that call to Travelers is your call, so we will get the notification right then. Another question was, do we need a report from the supervisor on all claims, or just the first report of injury? Well, there's a couple of things that go along with that. One is the first report of injury needs to go in for the claim purposes, but for your purposes, in trying to prevent this accident from happening again, you'd want to have that supervisor report of injury. So we get not only the person that was injured's point of view, but also the supervisor in the area, so we can track that problem down. If there was an unsafe condition, we want to take care of that before somebody else is injured with that. Let's see.
It's a good point.
Will you send us the forms we have seen in this presentation? Yes. Lance will be sending those out a little bit later today, and so we will send all of those to you. Another bit of information on this is we are recording this webinar, so if you want to go back and review it again, we will make that available on our website a little bit later today. And
well, it sounds like we had a good group there. Good group.
Yes, they had woken up a little more than the 7 o'clock group. Good questions coming in there. I think we've covered all of those. Just want to bring up one thing. If you have multiple people attending this session, please send me an email with their names so we can give you credit for attending. My email address is jason@utahtrust.gov. And anything else, Lance?
No, I want everyone to recognize they have the choice to go out and work safe, and I want you to take that choice. We got a lot riding on you. So have a safe week.
Thanks, Lance. I'm going to be back in just about 40 minutes with the next webinar, and it is on what is in your risk management go bag, and we're excited to see how that one works out. And thanks, Lance, for spending the time to give us this information. If anybody has any other questions, please feel free to contact Lance or Doug or myself, and we will do our best to answer any of those questions that you might have. Go out and have a safe day.
All right, guys.